Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of the Web Visions podcast. My name is Shlomo, and this is my co-host.
I'm Vic. Here, Shlomo's the strategy of Visible Magic.
And he's a CTO of Visible Magic. Web Visions is our podcast where we kind of delve into the things that we work on in our company. It's blockchain, Web3, AI, AR, spatial computing, and everything that kind of mixes it. Some open source, some not. We just work on a lot of new technologies and help bring individuals, brands, and companies into the fold of where we're going in the future. Today, we have a great guest. We have Boris Mann. He was an old friend of mine and one of the smartest people I know on the internet for the last 20 years. And it was really a great talk. Wasn't it, Vic?
It's a really great talk about the federated networks, social networks, which is really interesting development after Blue Sky, Mastodon, and stuff like this. And we just in early stage. Details are in the podcast itself. Click like, subscribe, and here we go.
And enjoy our interview and talk with Boris Mann. And we'll see you next week. Thank you. All right, I'm very excited. We have my old buddy Boris Mann here, living in Canada. I believe he's one of the thought leaders in my generation who's Canadian. I don't know a lot of big internet Canadian generational thought leaders in my life, but that's how long I've known Boris Mann. Welcome. How are you, sir?
Awesome. Great to see you, Shlomo. Yeah, it feels a little bit like we're looping the mid-2000s, but that's what we say, right? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Seriously, it's the why I'm still here in the bear market, for these last couple of years. Like, it's one thing to be in the crazy times 3 years ago, but we're here in the bottom where it really does feel like how we met, like, I don't know, Northern Voice conference or something like that, right? And the things I feel we are both doing are just extensions from that work of.
We're at a really interesting point. We're at a 20-year anniversary of a bunch of different things. So roughly 20 years minus a month now. Flickr launched, and Flickr, so 2004, and Flickr really kicked off a bunch of social. And for context for others, this was pre-Amazon Web Services, pre-easy billing like Stripe, pre-Facebook, and pre-YouTube. And it was also pre-OAuth. So really Flickr kicked off APIs. And we were all very excited about this transition from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, except for the rather awkward part where they were all platforms that slammed shut behind us. And thus we've had to keep building and looking for other directions to move around.
Totally. Like, in terms of APIs shutting, Twitter, I think, broke my heart the most, because a lot of my engagement with the website was through APIs, like other people's companies,
Yeah, Twitter, obviously another sort of foundational piece. The notable one there, and another Canadian thought leader, is Blaine Cook. So he was the lead engineer at Twitter, and then got involved in OAuth 1.0, as a way, because what was happening with this developer ecosystem, users had to put their main passwords, directly into a third-party website. Right. And that's why we've got things like public-private key infrastructure as well, where we can securely do some of those things and have an account that's kind of portable. But of course, the OAuth safety mechanism doesn't help if the proprietary parent platform just says, nope, you developer are cut off, you user are cut off.
And even more than that, like, since Elon got it, like, I have no skin in the game of love or hate of Elon, really, because, I don't mind that I have to move on the internet to find my new social spaces. Welcome to living organisms called the internet, right? But when I read a couple months ago where he got rid of all the media that was in our tweets over the last like 15 years, that really hurt me because they didn't give me an off ramp for it. They just did it. And I wouldn't say my Twitters are embedded in a lot of blog posts in the world, but enough. And I care about it. Like I don't delete my past on Twitter like other people do. I don't also look at it, but it's still mine. And I thought that was a really caustic moment.
I've actually been running. Actually, it's a really it doesn't work anymore because the APIs are down. But for about a decade, there was an educator who actually really knew Google's app script, and he wrote a little Google app function that would fetch your Twitter archive on a daily basis. And you could then publish it, store it and publish it on your own GitHub repo. So regardless of any other exports, I've had a long running that because I'm like, it's a platform, it's proprietary. I know we're going to get burned at some point. And I think this is where we're in an interesting time where people are like, oh, in the same, and I think the flip side as well, we're seeing people. I mean, going back even to the pandemic launch of Clubhouse, at one point I was grumpy for a couple of reasons. One, because people were walking right into the arms of another proprietary platform.
True.
One. But I was also kind of grumpy, like, haven't you seen this before? But for what I've realized in the last little while, a lot of people are experiencing my first new social network. Right. And you know what? That's the part. And this is, we were talking before, Shlomo, we were setting up for this call. I'm excited. I'm naturally a positive person and I kind of look forward and so on, but I'm excited. We've got a selection of protocols, of open social protocols. They're heading in interesting directions. And I want to leave room for young people and others to be like, man, a new social network, isn't this so exciting? And we've already seen the cycle happen a couple of times where it's relatively small and cozy, and then it gets popular and new people come in and everyone's like, well, it's not like it used to be, and we're going to need to have some moderation features. And it's like, yeah, we're actually aiming for world scale social networks, which also means lots of safety and moderation and muting and a few other things like that. So I'm excited. So I'd love to hear what you guys, what new accounts are you experimenting with?
Me personally, because I feel I have no choice because of the industry I'm in, I'm playing around a lot of Farcaster and their frames, which is really putting dApps within the timeline, where it could be as simple as a PDF, robust as a minting button, or a token allocation button, or just an acknowledgement situation of various ways. I have mixed feelings about the implementation if we want to go developer deep in this. But I'm not the developer, right? Like Vic is. So maybe I'm more like coming from, I don't code, but this still makes me nervous. I find the interface, the button that like turns your PDF from page 2 to page 3 is the same looking button as the one that presses mint. Like I feel that is like a safety issue to me, but it's new. Like I love when we talk about how social networks didn't allow us to tie into their networks. Right now, for me, that is one. I don't use a lot of federated products. I was wondering if you guys are. If you guys are part of the Fediverse, I assume you are. I feel I'm one of the few people who is disengaged that is not part of the Fediverse in a real way. Like I just can't deal with it. But does anyone want to talk about that? Vic, you play?
Yeah. So I actually consume the media across, like what I used to, and I don't post much anywhere because I like private network, private messenger, and respect privacy in this way. So I try not to source my data anywhere. So I'm out of Facebook, out of Twitter, maybe on LinkedIn.
Not
but
to
it's
speak
because
for
of
you,
necessity.
Vic. Not to speak for you, Vic, but to know you, I feel your biggest social network is GitHub. Right?
No,
I feel you're like digging
our
in,
own
you follow
GitLab.
various coders. What?
Yeah,
Right.
of course.
Your own GitLab instance. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, and Shlomo and I think are a little bit the same at the end of the day, where we play extroverts on the internet. And so experiment widely with a lot of things, and experiment in part because we're middle-aged white men living in the global north. So we can use our privilege, in fact, to test the boundaries of being very open in public. And that's a little bit how I think about myself as a technologist, is experimenting some of these things, experimenting with the edges of some of these things, and trying to keep in mind how might this be for others.
Mhm.
Farcaster, big fan. So here's my reveal. Here's my reveal of the future of social.
Please.
I think there's 3 open social protocols in contention, and that is ActivityPub, which powers things like Mastodon and a bunch of other things like that. So W3C, and Meta. So Facebook, Meta have Threads. They've ActivityPub enabled it. So let's assume Threads, with tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users, continues and has opt-in connection. So I think ActivityPub will continue. I also run a Canadian co-op owned social media that we set up that runs a Mastodon server and some other ActivityPub stuff. And that's playing around with the ownership model.
Before we jump from that, can you break that down? There was a lot in that last sentence. Like, what exactly do you have? What are you guys doing there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Cosocial.ca. It's something that Evan Prodrimo, who's actually one of the editors on the ActivityPub spec.
I know Evan very well. He has one of the greatest mustaches of anyone I know.
He does. And he kind of said, like, so should we not just run a server, but should we think about governance? Should we run a co-op so that is member-owned social media? So we've been around for about a year. Got 120 members or so. We'll charge you $50 Canadian per year, and we've got a bunch of volunteers.
Which is more than the US dollar, much more than the US dollar. So
No.
It cost me about $63 American.
No. Other way around for those listening later.
Oh, okay.
So I think activities can be around. It was early. It has a lot of like deeply Linux on the desktop folks involved, which has some really interesting concepts. I'm highly aligned with open source, but I think we'll see what happens there. Next is Blue Sky's app protocol, which is just in the middle of federation right now. Very excited. I know the team really well. I'm user 22 on that network, and they're about 5 million right now. I think there's a lot of different things that could be done with it, not just microblogging. And then the third one is Farcaster, which is the most Web3 enabled, so sufficiently decentralized. So the IDs for your identity are on chain on Optimism, but everything else is off chain. And there's CRDTs. There's everyone's favorite Merkle trees.
Those frames are not off chain. I don't think.
The frames are also off chain. The frames are actually super exciting. Frames. Okay.
Am I right? Am I right or wrong? Because like I said, you're smart, and I'm just not as smart. Frames is still tracking through a website, typical old school website way. The embedding of it's really embedding a web page into it, and it still has those trackers involved. Am I wrong?
You're wrong.
Thank you. I don't know why I feel this way.
Sort of. I'm actually really excited with frames because let me step back a bit. Search is broken. I think we agree. So both from an incentive alignment perspective, the whole chasing SEO, I search something and I get SEO garbage, which doesn't, whatever the search engine is, really doesn't matter. And it doesn't really get me to the but I'm looking for stuff for me. It's just personalized SEO garbage or whatever. And that's also has impact for any distribution for an app developer or anything else like that. Social is fragmented. So we might have just really like leaned into Twitter before for an early adopter crowd or something like that. But a lot of people have their finger on the algorithmic feed, APIs and everything else like that. So as a developer, and I, not just as a code product, but anything, how do I distribute? Where do I go for that? I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to get to the top of an app store, also somebody else's algorithm or anything else like that. Organic content doesn't reach as much anymore broadly, again, from an SEO perspective. So where do I go to get distribution? And really, distribution rules everything around me. Dream, right? And so my take is these three social protocols are an opportunity as a developer to think about, if you have a multiplayer product, what would it look like to engage, I'll broadly say, data federation? There's a social graph, there's updates. You can build things other than microblogging if you want it. And rather than building a traditional LAMP application, and instead of using a global consensus, a blockchain, which is very expensive and is not appropriate for everything, is there stuff in the middle that we push content over? And then the next thing, if that's distribution, if we can lower the barrier for an app to have something that's in a feed that has distribution built into it, amazing.
Agreed. Definitely agreed.
So essentially, what I'm hearing is like Facebook apps or something like this, but on a more federated level.
I think again, a lot of us that were around for that saw that happen, and we also saw what was called at the time the shark fin. You had this almost like vertical adoption, and then bloop, because there wasn't kind of any adoption there, right? So I think broadly speaking, Farcaster is not going to be trapped. Sorry, Frames is not going to be just in Farcaster. I'm going to be working.
You mean like it'll be kind of this protocol that they will give to other federated systems?
We don't have to ask anyone's permission.
I'm hearing this.
So there's an Open Frames project, David Furlong and a few other folks as well. One of the hacks I'm interested in collaborating on is Frames for Blue Sky.
Love it. So what is stopping that happening? Is it their dev cycles? They just don't have the dev cycles to do it, or they're waiting for you to do it? Blue Sky Incorporated, whoever they are.
Blue Sky Public Benefit Corporation LLC. If we'd like to be correct for the record.
Sure.
I also don't need to ask their permission. There's tons of third-party clients, and this is actually a client interaction. There's work to be done to, as you were saying, figure out the security model, but kind of security is always hard, right? But that kind of pattern where it uses the open graph tags. So potentially any website can play, just like we had. So Twitter embeds are off spec before Open Graph, and so a lot of people support both Twitter and Open Graph. And what the Warpcast team did is they have basically vendored those Open Graph tags with special Farcast vocabulary. So there might be ones that we need for Blue Sky to support that particular protocol, to extend it or other stuff like that. But we should be able to have broad support, and this is pretty easy. This is your CMS like WordPress or anything else like that could insert some features at the top that are automatically interactive, and all of a sudden, all existing web content could be enlivened with context of your social experience. Damn, boys.
Yes, I totally dig it. Vic, as a developer, I know you're not a social person, but as a developer who hears this new avenue, right, of honestly, we're calling it just general interaction, but let's be honest, it's commerce, right? It's not, it'll only work if commerce goes through it, right? So as a developer, where's your head at about that? Like, is that a meaningful thing to you?
Guys, really, I I don't use that much the Blue Sky, and I don't use that much the federated media. I'm sorry for
Oh no,
talking about this.
one thing I like about where we're moving in social networks is it's okay to not use all these, because that was our problem in Web 2, that we thought it was okay to use everything, right?
Yeah.
Now, just like we thought it was okay to silo every single person you know into one network, we know that's just mentally caustic. It's inappropriate and on a humane level for a human. So that's why Farcaster, I'm really only talking to one subset, and the things I write there is only one part of my identity, right? I don't really put Instagram pictures on Farcaster. Does not really happen for me. But a meme about a meme coin would. You know what I'm saying? Or and Instagram is pictures of me looking filtered and sexy, as opposed to the image you're seeing right now. But so I'm all in on these things, because to me, what makes it even actually worthwhile in terms of, like I said, if there's no economic layer in the post-capitalistic system, there's no value to keep it moving for people, right? So Farcaster Frames allows me, where my head's at, is to create a situation that will bring economics to my work, as well as just center on one part of my brain, which I think is very humane, which wasn't around there in Web 2.0. Was that like big?
May I jump in a little bit, guys?
Please.
So the real question is like, what is the audience there playing with all this stuff? What is the adoption looks like of this stuff? Because the X and Facebook, they just dominate all the socials, and people are there. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the sources, all the information outlets there. So what's the traction right now? What do you think, guys, about this?
Yeah. So like I said, I was user 22 on Blue Sky. It's now over 5 million and continuing to grow. And so my take is, if you are in conversation and working with next gen anything, those are very good places to be. If you're speaking to open source developers, there's a ton of them engaging in all of these systems right now, with a little more awareness and interest of all of these things. So it reminds me, like I said before, of the mid 2000s, when this stuff was starting and came to dominate. And I think that the economic loops around it, as Shlomo talked about, mean that that's a reinforcing system, because as you close the doors on reach in these other systems, unless you pay, then people look for reach that they don't have to pay for. So there will be continued experiments in anything that doesn't have a pay to play model.
Yeah,
that's my take. I think Vic, I wanted to come back to what you were saying about more private spaces. So there's a really great concept by Venkatesh Rao. Maggie Appleton ended up doing a really amazing illustration of this, of talking about the dark forest and the cozy web. So dark forest is basically open internet. Anyone can see your stuff. Anyone can insert malware and ads and kind of like, and that's the experience of like visiting a web page today of any kind, right? Ads, trackers, everything else like that. And then cozy web is those telegrams or matrix or other private spaces where you're like, oh, I'm in this cool call with Shlomo and Vic and Boris, and we can have like a little discussion, and we don't have to be fighting everyone off, right? And at best, we don't have search, but we have discovery. Like, hey, what's your 3 favorite protocols? And we need that too. I had a really great discussion with Dan Finley, founder of MetaMask, and I was saying these are the next gen social networks, and he said, no, none of them have privacy at their core. Right. I'm like, I mean, correct. They're literally open social,
Yeah.
not cozy. So Vic, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you think about connecting with people privately or selectively?
Connecting with people privately. I think that Telegram so far for 10 years has very good example of what it might look like, because it started as a P2P messenger, okay, and they slowly started to add social functions there, and they were very good product guys and added them unobtrusively, so it doesn't hurt a lot. And I use it like a very robust messaging system. It has something like 600 million audience or something like this. And I think it's a very good example of semi-public social network, because it is essentially what it is, the social network. WhatsApp, as an opposite, WhatsApp
It's
fails.
a trash fire, literal trash fire.
Yeah. They fail to do this, and the difference between them very subtle. It's P2P. You can have this, but Telegram is something different because it's cozy, it's easy to use. There are a lot of people, and essentially is the essence of multiplication, the power law of network connections of the social network. So the more people there, the more value it has. So this is it, like the very good compromise between private and public.
Yeah, Telegram is I have a complicated relationship with it. I find myself it's not a social network, and because there is no public feed. You can find public groups, but even that you kind of find on the internet with a link or something like that, right? So it's not a social network. It is a messenger. The lines here are blurry because whether it's Discord or Telegram or a few other things like that, you end up in these social groups,
Right.
but they're not open. They're over here. They're not indexed. They're not searchable, and so on. I tend to reach for Signal instead.
Okay.
I have trust issues with Telegram.
Why aren't you like me, who believes privacy is dead and it's all over? Why aren't you on? How are you not caring like me anymore?
I think there's something to that too, where I almost don't worry about it in the sense that such massive volumes of information. I would love to find my own stuff in the future. Good. You mean someone's tracking all my stuff? Amazing. Maybe they have a search index.
Right. That's how I feel about the tax man. That's how I feel about ex-girlfriends. Like, you're never going to find the stuff I've done because, one, I'm too meaningless. And two, it's just too hard anyway. Like the tax, whatever I would owe the tax man, it's just not worth their time to even figure it out for me. You know what I mean? Like, I have my credit card. As I tell people, take my credit card. It'll get you to Tijuana. It just won't get you to Mexico City. It'll just get you across the border, right? It won't really get you anywhere.
I think a lot of this ends up being the discussion of protocols versus platforms.
No. Believe me, guys, it's a discussion of introverts versus extroverts. That's it.
That's what I was going to say. So for Vic,
for sure,
for Vic, the reason why Telegram is a social network, it's the same reason why it's easy to not have vampires in your house, because the only way vampires come in your house is if you invite them.
Yeah.
Right. And that is Vic's version of a social network is you could come in when I let you.
So the discussion about Git is interesting. I want to pass this in because I think this is an interesting one to bring up at the tail end of things. So we've got all these things that basically look the same: feeds, microblogs, like etc. In different ways. The innovation is, what if we made you allowed slightly longer posts, right? I'm most interested in next gen data structures. Some like frames that sit inside, but the other one ends up being using ActivityPub or app protocol. App protocol is something called lexicons. ActivityPub has a number of different data types. Farcaster is kind of unstructured data, so you can kind of do what you want there. I haven't looked at that layer too much. And I think GitHub's getting too big and owning too much, and has a very strong lock on a developer social network. So my what if for
they got a strong lock on it because they did the work.
Because they bought it all. Yeah. A number of people are now, but what we actually see is various doors closing around it again. So to be fair, GitHub still today has one of the most flexible OAuth implementations that you can openly use pretty much everywhere. Amazing, right? But a bunch of us have started talking about what if various social activities were federated. So there's a bunch of people building on ActivityPub. So they're called Code Forges is the name. So Forge Federation. So Vic talked about running your own GitLab instance, or a number of really great reasons to run your own open source Git repo. It's like, it's the core of your company or project. Okay, maybe you put it over there for social reasons, but we already talked about that we want to be cozier. So could we benefit for some of that social graph, that code graph, by, again, imagine if my stars appeared everywhere, or imagine if notification of my PRs or issues appeared everywhere. So nothing exists like this today, but it's just getting started. Is that a social network you would join, Vic?
Probably no. It's my personal stuff. So,
Forrest, we're running out of time. Can you give us some log lines about vision? Why you are even building it? What is it?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm just back from ETH Denver. My first time there. It was great. Had lots of really good discussions.
I was there for 7 days and lost this voice. Did we?
I was at other side events. This is how big it's gotten. So what Fission is, we've been building for about 5 years as a protocol-first engineering organization. We work closely with the IPFS and Filecoin ecosystems. So a lot of what we do is kind of big tent Web3. A lot of the stuff that we produce isn't blockchains, but off-chain verifiable data. So identity, data, and compute at the edge is what we've been building. We have a decentralized auth protocol called UCAN. We have built a encrypted file system on top of IPFS called WinFS. And finally, IPVM, which is basically content addressable compute. We're now in the midst of launching our compute platform, which is called Everywhere Computer. You can find out more at everywhere.computer. And basically, you write small functions in any programming language, compile them to WebAssembly, publish them to IPFS, and then connect that with decentralized compute. So in Web3 terms, what we can offer is sort of like a subnet model. Imagine launching your own Netlify or Vercel or Amazon Lambda for your application-specific blockchain or project. And you can have a handful of functions that are published that developers can remix, where those functions have compute built right in. So instead of the developer having to bring it down, build some stuff, deploy it separately, and you changing your SDK and so on, you as an application or organization or affinity group can write functions that are immediately computable. And they work local first because of content addressing and IPFS, and they can also be distributed everywhere. So we're just getting started with that. And I'd love for people to check it out.
Holy moly, that's a big thing. Go on, Vic.
One more question, because it's starting to get interesting. So what blockchains do you have bridges to, or do you plan to have bridges to?
That's very much going to be on who's interested, right? We've had some early interesting discussions with Base. Filecoin has their new interplanetary consensus, which is also very like subnet and localized Base. Brooke, my CTO and co-founder, have long worked at the core of Ethereum. So all of these things are compatible, and we're looking for early partners to work with. I will plug Source Network, source.network. So that one's almost certainly for sure. Hey, John, I'll send you some paperwork. They're a really interesting Cosmos-based network that has a decentralized database product. but they don't have compute. So we're a great peanut butter and jelly that we're going to experiment there.
Got it. So I have really bunch of questions about vision because it's really something interesting going on, but I think we're out of time. Am I correct?
We are going to bring you back to be an all vision episode.
Sure, absolutely.
Because now that Vic, I really wanted Vic to meet you, and you're very busy.
It was a pleasure.
About 10 minutes before the call, we started talking about you and what you do, and now that he's really gelling with who you are as a builder in this world, we're going to bring you back in a bit.
Awesome.
Also, I'm going to slide back in the DMs because it bothers me that we were both in Denver for a week and did run into. We had the governor at our Edge City event that we were sponsoring. You know what I mean?
I dropped by Edge City on the way out. It was a great space.
We are one of the sponsors of it, and we're going to be
Amazing.
in Austin, and we're just on a tour right now, be it
Amazing.
Europe or America. So, hey, Vic, take us out. What do they need to know to do what with our video on YouTube and LinkedIn?
Yeah. This is what I learned from social media. Yeah. Click, like, subscribe.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Boris Man. We'll have all your links in the description. Episode 17 of Web Visions is out. See you next week.
See you next week.
Boris, you're off.
Okay. Boris, you're really awesome.
I appreciate you on a personal level that I could ping you yesterday and 24 hours later, you have time for me. I love it very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Vic, like, my whole take on all of this is I assume that, like, I'm totally jazzed by decentralized permissionless technology and a bunch of other things like that. But what I have generally learned is that if the distribution channels are closed, we'll never get anywhere. So I'm assuming that tech will go like this and keep moving along, but that there are some leverage points of distribution that, again, we need to like start working on now, precisely because you said the adoption needs to be there so that we can put new apps on top of it.
Yeah, let's cover this because I really would like to continue this conversation.
Oh, we are definitely, and they'll make sure you guys are connected anyway. Boris, maybe we should make Vic join your little federated instance with the other developers and open source folks.
It would be a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. And happy to also bring on Brooke, my co-founder, who's the primary author of all these protocols.
We will do a full developer-focused Vision Shill episode.
Yeah. And Shlomo can contact us, and I'd love for you to kick the tires on what we're doing. Again, it's there for other people to run as well. So lots of interesting opportunity.